If you look into the hot dog and you see what yourself, if you just see if it's just a mirror, then you've really reached nirvana, I think.
I was going to say the exact same thing. You've reached nirvana.
Yeah.
Jamie Loftus is a comedian, podcaster, and author of the recent New York Times best-selling book Raw Dog: The Naked Truth About Hot Dogs, which chronicles her 2021 road trip across the United States to both celebrate and critique this potent symbol of America. In addition to stand-up and comedy writing, Jamie has also produced and hosted several investigative podcasts, including Ghost Church, Lolita Podcast, ACCast, and My Year in Mensa. And she hosts an ongoing feminist movie review show called The Bechdel Cast. As a companion to our Urban Legends Hotline episode on the inbred cannibal pig people of Pig Hill, we are going to discuss some hot dog-related urban legends and conspiracy theories, hear all about the history, culture, and politics around these complicated meat tubes, and just for a little treat, we'll also get schooled on the aggressively gendered branding of gas station jumbo pickles. I'm your host, Chelsey Weber-Smith, and this is American Hysteria. Hello, Jamie Loftus. Thank you so much for coming on the show to talk about hot dogs.
Oh, it is. It's the only thing I know how to do at this point.
You've been doing it quite a bit. So I want to start just diving right in about this passion that you have for hot dogs that maybe, I don't know if it's run out or not at this point, but I mean, you've covered everything from Lolita, the book, to spiritualism, to Kathy Comics, to Mensa. And then I know at the end of your Lolita podcast, you said, I think next I'm going to do something about hot dogs. And boy, did you. So I thought to introduce yourself, would you tell us a little bit about why you chose hot dogs for your first book, and in addition to that, why you chose to just travel the country in general in the name of this processed meat?
Yes. Well, first of all, I'm really excited to be on this show with you. I feel like, I don't know, it's so wild that we haven't actually gotten to manage to hang out in person yet, because I feel like we're so aligned on hyper specific interests to the point where when you were like, yeah, I'm working on an episode about pig people, I'm like, that scans. I would love to do an episode on pig people. But yeah, I mean, for the hot dog thing, I'm kind of glad I said that at the end of Lolita, because I was trying to just put it out there and kind of will it into existence. I always wanted to try to write something about hot dogs. There's a lot written about them, but nothing that I could find anyways that like squared the myth and the fun kind of parts of it with the more challenging and just straight up bad parts of it, and going into labor practices in the meat packing industry. And so that just like didn't exist. And so I wanted to make it exist. And the way I was able to do that was by sort of pitching a version of it that involved a lot of travel, because I did this trip in the summer of 2021, and there was, I think basically the reason I was able to get the book published is because my future editor was like, well, you didn't hear it from me, but no one's written a travel book in a while, and who can say why in like the summer of 2021. So I was like, oh, okay, well, if that's what like it needs to be done, then I'll do it that way. And I had the greatest and worst time, and I still love talking about hot dogs so much.
So do you want to tell us how the hot dog got its name? Because I know you talked about myth versus fact, and that's kind of a cute little myth versus fact, I feel like.
Sure. Yeah. So there's a lot of myth around how the hot dog got popular. A lot of people are like, it's the Columbian Exposition of 1893.
Isn't it always? I'm sorry, but I feel like all roads lead to the Columbia Exposition or to the Manson family. That's our motto here at American Hysteria.
It is like infuriating how persistent that is. Like, it's just like, no, how much could have possibly happened at this goddamn thing? But it wasn't. I mean, it's like all the answers about hot dogs tend to be a little vaguer and less spicy than you would like them to be, which is why the lies are, more potent, which I know you talk about all the time. Sure. But in the case of the hot dog, my favorite myth associated with it is that it was by a bunch of Yale frat boys who had this fancy little stained glass wagon, because of course they did. And they sold hot dogs out of the back, and they had this really, I thought, kind of obnoxious, pretentious poem that went with the hot dog. And there's all of these. I think that the hot dog mythos is very invested in being a deeply working class meal, which it still is. But unfortunately, it was the perverts over at Yale that appear to have had the strongest hand in naming it.
Of course. Don't they always? Harvard or Yale?
I know. Disgusting.
Disgusting men. Okay. We're going to get into some urban legends that, as I mentioned, I rooted up like a truffle pig for you. Some conspiracy theories as well, all centered around the hot dog.
Oh, I'm so excited.
So I think the first one, I'm going to let's do like a you're wrong about format. Okay. And I'm going to see if you know anything about each of these urban legends as we go along, and we will discuss.
Okay.
I feel like this is definitely one that you have come across in your life, and that is just like the great question of what is in a hot dog.
Oh, yeah.
I've got this little urban legend here to read you that a friend of a friend told someone. A friend told me that ground up earthworms are being used as filler in many meat products like wieners. The name on the package is sodium erythorbate. I've checked packages at the stores here and there and have found only one brand without this ingredient. My little boy loves hot dogs, and I hate to think of how many I've fed him over the past years with earthworms in them. So we've also got like pig anuses and genitals and like organs, maybe a ground up human hand. We've got ground up rats. So have you heard kind of about this urban legend at all?
Yes. So I've heard of all kinds of stuff ending up in a hot dog. I would say, as far like of the mystery ingredients you just listed, pig anus is actually feasible. Like as far as what is included in the hot dog, it tends to mainly be head meat and just sort of like the quote unquote lesser savory cuts.
When you say head meat, is that just like the peeled off faces?
Yeah.
Okay, great.
It's just the whole ass head.
Okay.
And
all right.
So I would not be surprised, just even based on what I know about meatpacking practices, which have, if anything, regressed in the last 100 years. I would not be surprised if you ended up with whatever, a loose eyeball, a loose something in the face in your hot dog. Not impossible at all. Anus, sure, why not? As far as earthworms, I've also heard that theory. As far as I know, there is no credence to it, but I bought this off of like a used book website. I wish I had it handy, but it's a very, very short book, and it's written by someone who has worked as an inspector at a meat processing plant for years, self-published. Who knows why this book exists, but it meant a lot to me. And she, I remember specifically, she addresses that rumor in the book and seems beside herself about it. She's like, why would we put earthworms in the hot dogs? I've had enough. Like, she just had it up to here with the earthworm theory. So granted, she's very biased, but she self-published it, I think, under an assumed name. And it was supposed to be like, here's what it's actually like to work at a hot dog factory, which is actually an incredible resource, because there are these laws that I write about in the book called ag laws that are basically intended to make it impossible for employees to report when things are not up to code in these factories, and it makes it really difficult for journalists to report on it. So there were some things that she was like, yeah, the practices are not flawless. But as far as the earthworms, she was just beside herself. She was like, enough. It feels like the QAnon of the hot dog world.
Oh, wow. Yeah. Well, we're going to get a little bit into QAnon later, in fact.
Of course we are.
So speaking of this factory farming technique and stuff, how is it that a hot dog is actually made? We hear about this pink goo. We hear about all these disgusting things that could potentially be in there. What is the truth of how the sausage is made?
Well, I guess it depends. I mean, it really does depend on what you're eating, where you get your meat. If you're just talking about like your standard grocery store hot dog, you're just not going to be thrilled with what the answer is.
Sure.
Because, I mean, for example, especially, and this is like not a judgment at all, but as far as like the cheaper hot dogs that are available, your Bar S, right? Mm-hmm. And anything that comes out of a Smithfield or a Tyson factory, the labor practices are atrocious, even if the product is all right. Mm-hmm. So what you'll find is once the meat supplier has gotten the meat that's going to be used for the hot dogs, so the head meat, the sort of leftover meat from the finer cuts out of the horrific factory farming process, it goes through this series of, it's kind of similar to how an actual sausage is made, but it's way more processed. There's simply more vats. I wish I had the step-by-step breakdown committed to memory, but there's this incredible video that was produced in Canada called How It's Made Hot Dogs, in which they try to make this process seem appealing, where it starts with all the loose meat being put into these huge choppers to be cut in a finer way. And then you have like starches and syrups added to essentially like emulsify the meat a little bit. I think that's what really makes it different than a sausage, because you can tell that a sausage is like different kind of chunks of meat. Mm-hmm. But the hot dog has to be a uniform little jello-y guy. And so there's a lot of preservatives added. There's a lot of syrup added. There's a lot of, and then depending on the kind of hot dog you're getting, there's different spices added by region, which I think is interesting. It's very hard to get information about how hot dogs vary, but I could get conspiratorial about that.
Do you want to?
I kind of do. I mean, I don't have a specific accusation. I'm willing to believe the worst in anything that Smithfield and Tyson does. And if there's any way anyone listening can avoid eating stuff from those companies, I would highly recommend it. Yeah, I've heard that the spices they add are different from region to region, which might just truly be a regional thing. But I always just, especially when it comes to like food that is mostly being marketed at poor people, I just get suspicious about what is happening to the food. And, it's completely unsubstantiated and about as conspiratorial as I get about hot dogs, because it's basically illegal to know what is actually being done to the food, which doesn't seem like something you would do if you were not doing anything wrong. So it's very possible that is just something that's solely focused on don't look at the man behind the curtain because of labor practices. Mm-hmm. And also, obviously, every part of the factory farming process is horrific. But I also wonder, I'm like, is there anything in that process? Is there some sort of X factor? But it's so far been really hard to find out. So you go through several vats. I think there's like a syrup vat. There's a dust vat in which all the starch is added. And then they're sort of put into the little casings, which if you're getting a nicer hot dog, it would be natural casing, which would mean animal skin. If not, it's sort of just a synthetic casing that is just used temporarily for the hot dog to become the shape of a hot dog and then it's steamed off later in the process. But then it's, put through an oven and it sort of de-liquefies. It turns into a solid. It's so gross. But it is. It's like pink liquid meat that turns into brown, if you're lucky, solid. And that's a bit scary. And then at the end, the scariest part of all, some of our bravest soldiers are doing this job. It's the getting them into packages. And so there are these gigantic industrial machines that you have to feed these long strings of hot dogs into, and they move very fast. And ever since the industrial era, it was like an open joke among people who worked in these factories that if you lost one finger to these machines, that's how you knew that you were good at your job, because the machines just are trying to kill you. So it's like that is sort of a common joke. I'm not sure how common that still is, because the process has been significantly, computerized over the years, but it's a nasty little process. But I would recommend that people watch How It's Made Hot Dogs, because it's really funny, because it's just like this goofy guitar music playing over this series of hideous liquid meat vats. Like, they're really trying to make it seem like, isn't this cool? And it's like, no, it's just not.
You know what it's making me think of? Which is like, okay, do you remember the crayon factory that they showed on Mr. Rogers?
Oh my gosh, yes.
Could you imagine if they showed this on Mr. Rogers?
God, I mean, it's like truly, he would be the only person I would trust that could possibly.
R.I.P., man.
The best.
More after this. And now, back to the show.
Okay, so have you ever heard specifically about the urban legend of dog meat in hot dogs? Does that sound familiar to you?
I've definitely heard it. I haven't heard it with specificity.
Okay. So in June 2017, police arrested, allegedly, a 57-year-old Chinese immigrant for selling dog meat in New York City from his hot dog stand, right? So this goes around Facebook, as it does through all of the boomer channels. And I'm sure that a minion gets slapped on it at some point. So what actually happened is that it was a hoax article from a satire website called World News Daily Report, which the Washington Post describes as a website that delights in inventing items about foreigners either having sex with or killing animals.
My God.
Isn't that nice? So I think that this urban legend is something that comes up again and again with immigration, and especially in this case with Chinese immigration or immigration from other Asian countries. But I think that it's relevant because in your book, you talk so much about the relationship between hot dogs and the immigrants who sold them. So I'm wondering if we could talk a little bit about how this has affected like both the history and also the reputation of the hot dog.
Yeah, I was not aware of that specific false allegation, but I'm not surprised to hear it. It's so baldly racist. There's so much racism and gender discrimination in the hot dog world, which is a crazy sentence, but a true sentence. That's so disappointing to hear. Like, dog meat has been attached to it's part of why it's called the hot dog is, the clowns at Yale kind of like dunking on the reputation that this meal is developed. So it's definitely where it gets the name from. It's interesting because there is a read of that is what you were just describing, which is just speculating in a racist and a classist way that immigrants and poor people would eat dog meat out of desperation. But I think it's also just to make them appear just feral and, just, I don't know. It's very gross the way that that's positioned. And then on the other side of that, prior to the laws that Upton Sinclair's The Jungle sort of initiated in this space, there was sometimes dog meat in there. There hasn't been for well over a century now. But at the beginning, as at least as far as my research has indicated, the jungle was obviously like whatever. I think I pretended to read it in high school, and then I actually read it to do this. I really thought I had finished it, and then, but as I was reading it, I'm like, this is all new information. No, I must have lied. But I mean, it's a great book, and it's all about like an immigrant becoming radicalized to become a socialist and sort of the whatever emptiness of the American dream. And he works at a hot dog factory, Upton Sinclair, to do research on this, worked at a meat packing plant, and found that there was all sorts of shit in this meat. And in a way that I think the way that book is written makes it very clear that it is not the fault of the people working there for no money of what's in the meat. It's just what the CEOs and people in charge of those companies at that time were willing to do to turn out cheap product quickly. And it's a relatively small facet of that book, but is like almost entirely its legacy. And so, I mean, I believe by Upton Sinclair's own account, like it was likely that there was occasionally dog meat in sort of earlier industrially made hot dogs. Again, it's like such a weird conversation because there were also a lot of hot dogs in the early 1900s that were made at local butcheries that definitely would not have had dog meat in them. And so it just very much depended on like what era you're talking about, where you are, and what kind of hot dog you're looking at. But the jungle basically ensured, because its legacy is these two laws put into place to increase regulation at meatpacking plants, and they're laws that still exist today, that there hasn't been dog meat in any kind of hot dog in over 100 years. And any, I don't know, rumor to the contrary, it's like, examine the source. And I mean, your example is the perfect illustration of that.
Yeah, right. Well, and it to me also reminds me of, in our Pig Hill episode, the idea of pig people as like a dehumanization tactic. And I think we think of dogs as being kind of, right, the ultimate human companion. And to do something to a dog is so vile to our culture that it's a great way to create a villain out of thin air if we want one.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, now that you say that, it does feel like a very similar instinct of just a way to other and cheapen a human life.
Yes.
In a way that also feels like unfair to the animals too, because you're like, what did they ever do to you?
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, so let's move into some more conspiratorial Cold War. We'll move into the Cold War genre. Have you ever heard about the Pentagon's hot dog stand?
No.
Oh, you're going to like this. So the hot dog stand that is in the Pentagon's courtyard is kind of like directly in the center of the entire facility. And during the Cold War, the Soviets reportedly thought that the hot dog stand actually led to a secret underground bunker, and that they were using satellite imagery to spy on the officers who were entering and exiting the hot dog stand at about the same time every day. And they thought, okay, this must be the entrance to something else. And actually, in 2010, a Department of Defense communications officer said that at any given time, there were no less than 2 missiles aimed at the hot dog stand, though it all turned out to be, you know, an urban legend and not true at all. But it actually gained the nickname Cafe Ground Zero, the deadliest hot dog stand in the world.
Okay.
Yep. So.
This is all great. This is, and this also, like, this definitely falls under like conspiracy that I'm like, yeah, I mean, who am I to say that's not what's going on over there? Wow, that feels so like Denver airport coded.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Illuminati stuff. Yeah, like early Illuminati.
Oh my God, I love that theory. That rocks. And it does feel like the kind of like lazy bad writing that a Pentagon conspiracy would consist of like, ooh, we got to hide in plain sight. right, let's choose the most American food, and that's where we'll hide the hatch to the alien bunker. Like, hell yeah.
Oh, exactly.
I think that it's, I would like to know who allegedly busted that myth, because maybe they're a psyop.
Could be a psyop. I think everything's a psyop at this point. So you actually hit on something I wanted to talk about, and that's so this was a myth made up by Americans about America's own culture. And I think it's really interesting that the hot dog is the ultimate symbol that the Soviets would want to destroy, in a sense. And what did you learn on your travels and in your studies about the hot dog as a symbol for America? Because I really can't think of another food that is more, as we would say, quintessentially American, even if its origins aren't, than the hot dog. Maybe the hamburger, but it really feels like it's the hot dog.
It really does feel like the hot dog gets the edge. It's weird. I had a conversation to this effect on a great food podcast called A Hot Dog is a Sandwich. So it was a very intuitive conversation to have. But yeah, I do think that hot dogs, apple pie, Twinkies, it's I think that they do feel very American, even though they ultimately are descended from European sausage traditions, mostly from Germany and Poland and Greece. But I do feel like it's the things that make it American are, don't even really have a lot to do with the food itself. I like that it is, a lot of Americans, they immigrated from another place and, really took root in America. They began very much as a food of the underclass. But that about stops there. The rest is all marketing, really. And that's something that it's really kind of fascinating to trace is why this food? And I think it's because it is cheap, it is accessible. And as a food, I think it's kind of this neat little canvas thing that different regions of the U.S. and different cultures can project their own food traditions onto. And in that way, I think it's really cool. And then the other thing that makes it an American icon is that it couldn't exist without severe labor exploitation.
Yes, the American way.
Yeah. I don't know. I think the area of hot dog marketing as this almost scary, jingoistic to American pejorative way is connected to the Nathan's hot dog eating contest, which is just a source of endless fascination for me.
Oh yeah.
Where, even the origins of this contest, there's all of this false mythos associated with it, where it was started in the early 70s as a marketing ploy, which fine, but they consistently lied about it. They were like, no, this contest started on Coney Island in 1906 when a Greek immigrant and a German immigrant were having a conversation about how great America is, and then they decided they were going to have a little hot dog eating contest, and with Nathan's hot, and it's just total bullshit. But I think it's that's very consistent throughout hot dog lore of it always is consists of a sort of upstart underdog character who via the hot dog is able to achieve the American dream. It's also the story that we hear attributed to a lot of people who start their own hot dog companies. It's always made to seem like a very individual thing when really it's not. It was the result of, I think it's all, the truth is actually more interesting is it just is the result of immigrants coming to the U.S. from Europe. And as the U.S. became increasingly industrialized and the food became more accessible, it was the result of a few different cultures combining their food traditions and making this little freaky meat tube. I think that's a nice story, but that's very rarely how it's actually presented.
That makes sense. Absolutely. Okay. You ready to move on to our next conspiracy theory?
Let's go.
Okay. All right. Have you heard about Hot Dog Gate as it related to Pizzagate?
Oh, yes, but I haven't revisited it in a while.
Oh, you haven't?
No.
You don't revisit Hot Dog Gate monthly?
Please take me back. No, and that's on me.
That's on you. Okay, so you probably remember when Trump was criticized for serving all of the fast food, the White House, to the sports team.
But of course.
Yeah. So at that time, everybody was really mad that Trump would be criticized in that way. So up steps Alex Jones to defend his boyfriend. And he said that there was proof that Obama spent a bunch of money on a hot dog party. And this is what Alex Jones said on his show.
Okay. Yes. Okay, yes. I do remember this.
I learned this with the Pizzagate stuff. You've got admissions and thousands of emails about the kids that will be delivered into the hot tub for your pleasure. And then it's the FBI code words for sex with kids off their own Homeland Security manual. And they're talking about $65,000 worth of succulent hot dogs. Oh, God, these are good. I had these hot dogs in Hawaii and they were delivered by jet, is what Obama said. But it's male prostitutes. And look, Obama's having sex with 10 dudes a day, whatever. The point is that that's what's going on with your taxpayer time.
I know he's so evil, but he really was just saying shit.
Oh, yeah.
He's just it's so bizarre to revisit peak Alex Jones because you're just like, this is just every sentence is an increasingly more baffling racist Mad Lib.
I know.
Okay.
10 dudes a day. How does he find the time?
10 dudes a day. And then I also like that he then brushes it off and is like, but as I was saying about these succulent hot dogs that are made of women, I'm not clear on what I came across that early in my research process and I was like, oh, I wonder if there's some consistency to, and you're like, nope, this was just a sentence he said one day.
It all just came from when all of those Pizzagate, whatever, emails were leaked, whatever all of that actually was. There was just an email that said, from some, I don't know, some company related in some way to the White House. And it was just get ready for Chicago Hot Dog Friday. And then they made fun of Obama spending too much money on parties or something like that. And then we get that he's having sex with 10 dudes a day. And the code word is hot dogs.
Yeah, it's rooted in a valid criticism, but then turned up to a 45 for no reason. Oh my God. Anytime a government figure comes out for or against hot dogs, I hate it. I don't like when the hot dog is overly politicized, and because when we're recording this right now, it's we're in the middle of the story about the coup in Russia with Prigozhin, and even with Prigozhin, who is this, this figure who I didn't know anything about before a couple of days ago. He, of course, began his career in the restaurant industry. And first, he and his mom owned a hot dog stand. Wow. And now, all of a sudden, hot dogs have to do with the coup in Russia. They just really, can't stop getting press. There was a story that went around not too long ago that was Nancy Pelosi says she eats a hot dog every day, which, first of all, boo to her. And second of all, I don't believe that.
I can't imagine it.
What, truly, I'm it definitely scans as a weird lie, and I think it's just I'm are you just trying to win? Are you just trying to seem more American? What is the goal?
Was that propaganda in favor of Nancy or anti-Nancy?
It was generally, I think it was meant to be a pro-Nancy story.
She's just one of the people.
She's just the Americanist American. Yeah, it felt like.
That's what I think of when I think of Nancy Pelosi.
Right. You're just first of all, I don't want to hear about Nancy Pelosi unless I absolutely have to. But I guess this is a specific to me problem because anytime a celebrity thinks about a hot dog, I get 40 emails about it. So
I bet.
I'm in the middle of Prigozhin gate of do you have a statement to make about? You're no.
All right. I've got one that I feel like might be your favorite, might be being presumptuous. But okay, so when I type in hot dog urban legend, the very first thing that comes up, and comes up quite a few times, is the urban legend of the high school girl, sometimes a cheerleader, sometimes just kind of a snobby girl who thinks she's better than everybody, who gets drunk and then uses a frozen hot dog to masturbate. Have you heard of this? And then she ends up in the ER. Is this a story you know?
Chelsey.
It's the number one hot dog urban legend, Jamie.
Thank you. Okay, first of all, then I'm being exposed as not quite the hot dog scholar I've claimed to be. I have not heard about this story, but it's possible that this girl was me. Had you heard this like at any time before you were seeking this out?
I feel like I had, although it is part of this subgenre of urban legend that is known as the promiscuous cheerleader.
Okay.
And it's like, did you ever hear, and this is so gross, I'm sorry, listeners, but the stomach pumped cheerleader?
No.
Okay. I don't even know if we should go into it.
Whoa,
But
God.
just for your knowledge, it's about the cheerleader who has to get her stomach pumped because she has given blowjobs to so many of the guys at the high school.
What?
You didn't ever hear this one either?
No, she had. What was her? I'm like trying to even understand the logistics of this.
There aren't
was she
any.
so full of cum?
Yes. She had to get her stomach pumped.
Oh no, that is so cartoonishly evil to say. And also, like, I'm like, what was blowjob literacy like at this time?
Not good in the 90s.
Clearly very low. Wow.
Most people had just heard of a blowjob because of Clinton. It was actually not a well-known sex act for many adults until that happened. And in these urban legends, it's like the girl always ends up in the hospital. And folklorists kind of think it has to do with taking, like, because often it's an unattainable type of girl, right? It's like either the cheerleader or the popular girl or the glasses off becomes hot girl,
Sure.
or, you know, the smartest girl, or someone who has something over the guys, or often the girls who tell the stories about these, you know, these poor girls who get caught up in this legend. And actually, in 1993, there was a lawsuit in which the parents of a 15-year-old girl who was bullied so badly by this hot dog urban legend that the school settled with them for $250,000 because she was so bullied. She was like the hot dog slut. She just was mercilessly bullied, and they had to move away. So this is like an urban legend that actually had a real world impact. And I'm sure it happened. If it happened to this girl, it probably happened in a lot of different schools all over the place.
Absolutely. Jesus. Well, and also like good for her and her family for getting paid damages for that. But it's like you can't just sign a number to that sort of experience. That's horrible.
It's
God,
horrible.
hot dogs giveth and they taketh away.
That's what I say. Okay. Related to this hot dog urban legend, for our show, I feel like I'm always reading these academic essays that inevitably lead to Freud and Freudian interpretations. Like when we did our Jackass series, it was like all about the phallus and the torturing of the phallus and all that type of stuff.
God, what? We really gave that guy a long leash, didn't we?
Really did, and we're still giving it.
It's so weird. Have you ever found this to be true? I feel like even though I've gone down the like Freud being a not a very reliable person rabbit hole many times, and then I still occasionally like end up finding myself citing him anyways. I'm like,
I know.
get it together. Okay, so wait, how does this relate to Freud? Is it
okay? So yes, I wanted to ask you, in your studies and your experience with the hot dog, have you run into a lot of hot dog as phallus imagery? Because it feels like that's a part of this dog. Tell me about it.
Yes, there is going to be a lot of hot dog as phallus imagery. And I've found that is, I mean, it's generally like if you're just walking around New York City, on a lot of the street carts, you'll see a picture of a very sexy lady suggestively eating a hot dog and making eye contact with the photographer. It's definitely something that people want you to think about. And it usually shows up in a pretty like icky heteronormative way. That's also true of the Nathan's hot dog eating contest, which I still have. I'm going this week, and I have so many questions about like that contest was split into a men's contest and a women's contest. So deeply exclusionary, and you're like, where do non-binary competitors go? Are there non-binary competitors? What's going on? And the whole motivation for that decision was straight up just like the guys who run that contest just care for women. And
Sure.
so there's a huge marginalization thing going on there. But on the women's contest, there's always kind of suggestive color commentary about like, what does this remind you of anything kind of thing. It doesn't ever come up, interestingly, in the men's contest, I think, for bizarre, regressive, no homo reasons. However, it is also there's also a lot of suggestive hot dog content in the queer community, I have found. There is a weekly show within walking distance from where I live called Hot Dog Sundays at El Cid in Silver Lake. It is a very queer hot dog themed show. I've been before. There's often drag shows going on. I've been to hot dog themed drag shows. And there's usually like a local vendor outside the bar during Hot Dog Sundays at El Cid. So, everyone's horny for hot dogs. I've found.
Everybody can see whatever they want to see in the hot dog. It's really a mirror.
It's true. Yes, if you look into the hot dog and you see what yourself, if you just see if it's just a mirror, then you've really reached nirvana, I think.
I was going to say the exact same thing.
Yeah.
You've reached nirvana.
Okay, well, we're on the same page there.
This just reminded me really quick about, we did a burgers episode, and I learned that the McDonald's M was designed by someone using Freudian theory to remind consumers of a mother's breasts.
No.
Yeah, bro.
Absolutely. Oh God. I just like, sometimes I'm like, wow. And those people run the world. And isn't that interesting?
Isn't it?
So bizarre. This is unrelated, but I just think about it a lot. I feel like there's not a lot of, because there are a lot of like celebrity burger joints. Let's say there's a lot of celebrity like donut cafe kind of places. I'm thinking of like Danny Trejo like owns 1 million restaurants in LA, but there's not really a celebrity hot dog restaurant really. They mostly don't seem to, I don't know. I'm not upset about it, but the one celebrity hot dog restaurant I heard of was, I think, from the 70s, and it was Mickey Rooney's like Weenie Palace or something. And it was just Mickey Rooney trying to bust into the hot dog business, and the signature dish there was a hot dog that was a circle, which is such a beautiful image. It was like a hot dog Ouroboros, basically.
Wow.
And they put it on like a bun, and they're like, it's like a burger. And you're like, no, it's not.
What's in the middle?
Nothing. Maybe toppings.
Just a void.
I'm pretty sure nothing. I wasn't able to. It was such a short-lived business that I wasn't able to find a picture. So I'm strictly going off of the description, but they're like, it's a burger-shaped wiener. And you're like, so it's just a meat circle. I'm pretty sure that's what it was.
Okay. So like, because in my mind, right, it's like a donut, and it's like a scenario of like you bite into the void. The void bites into you.
And have truer words ever been spoken?
I don't think so. Not on our show anyway.
It's true.
More after this. And now, back to the show.
So on the same kind of note as our phallic hot dog imagery, I want you to tell us about the pickle family and the gender dynamics between giant pickles that you've discovered across the country.
Thank you for asking. This is a TED Talk that I've been, I think, giving across.
Peddling.
Yeah, I've really just been trying to get people to have this conversation with me because I find it so unwell that this is what happens. Yeah, so there's multiple brand. I mean, it's. I feel like we have an urge, humans for some reason, have an urge to anthropomorphize their food in the marketing of it to make it seem like the food is really excited to go inside of our bodies. It's a really strange thing, but I mean, it's like, whatever, that happens going back to when you're a kid. So there are a lot of like friendly Mickey Mouse looking hot dog mascots across the country that are all fairly, ambiguous. You're like, I don't know how this hot dog identifies, and I'm not thinking about it. I'm just happy to be here. And boy, does this hot dog want me to bite its head off. The pickles, though, are really aggressively gendered. The two brands that I wrote about were Van Holten's pickles, which is kind of your standard gas station pickle. They sell them at Target. They kind of sell them everywhere. And what I think is so interesting about them is that they have 4 flavors. There's like the dill pickle, there's the hot pickle, there's a sour pickle, and there's the garlic pickle. And you can buy these, and they come in like little bags suspended in their own juice. Incredible. Mm-hmm. And you can buy them for the exact same price, either with just a drawing of a pickle on the package, or for the same price, you can also get a really aggressively gendered woman. For the hot pickle, it's like a woman pickle in a black wig and lipstick. And she's holding a purse and she's wearing high heels. And you're like, why do I have this option? For whose idea was this? They have merch. There's one, the Sour Sis is a teenage girl pickle, and she's curvy ? Oof. Which is wild because the pickle is not curvy. It's a pickle.
Famously uncurvy.
And then Garlic Joe is, I don't know. I was like hating it. And then I found Garlic Joe and I'm like, I kind of love Garlic Joe. Garlic Joe he's kind of a gym rat. He's wearing a crop top that says gym on it. He has chest hair and no pants.
Oh, he's hot. I'm looking at him.
Yeah. He's kind of studly, that Garlic Joe. And it's also like the first 3 pickles, Big Papa, Hot Mama, and Sour Sis, they're all like coded as a family unit. Garlic Joe, we have no idea how he relates to this family, if he even knows them, or if he's just kind of a guy that's around. And so I love Garlic Joe. And then in Toledo, there's this, I don't know. So I saw that earlier in the trip, and I saw it at every gas station. I was like, oh, that's so bizarre. Like it's bizarre enough to anthropomorphize food, but then to aggressively gender it's just a weird decision. And I thought it was isolated to that brand. But then when we went to Ohio, there was a different brand of aggressively gendered pickles at this place called Tony Paco's. And I don't know if it was intended this way. I'm probably overthinking this, but on the shelf, they have like 20 different kinds of pickles and peppers that they jar and sell. And it seems like you're following a story of like a young woman pepper who used to be a dancer and a pickle man falling in love and having a baby. Like, it's so bizarre.
Wow.
And there's one that it seems like they're like in bed together, and like she's like snuggling up against him and he's asleep and he's like kissing her on the head, and you're like, why is this on a pickle jar?
God, it's like Pac-Man or something. It's like Pac-Man lore.
It is. Yeah, you're just like, this is so much lore attached to this pickle and this pepper. And then, and then they have a baby, and the baby is a tomato.
What?
I know.
That also makes me think of Blue's Clues when the salt and pepper had the paprika. baby. That doesn't make sense.
It doesn't make sense. But I think that it's like sometimes, I don't know. I think because my brother was exactly Blue's Clues aged when that came out. And I vaguely remember like my parents and like just general preschool parents being like, hold on, how does salt and pepper make paprika? And I was like, guys, shut up.
How does salt and pepper make anything?
Right. Yes.
They're not alive.
I don't know. Do you want their sex tape? Like, it is what it is. I don't know. And I felt very defensive of the creative decisions being made over at Steve's house.
That's fine. My little brother also was Blue's Clues age, and he is our research assistant. So
no way.
Hi, Riley.
Hi, Riley.
He'd probably have something to say about this as well.
Were you absolutely scandalized, Riley, when salt and pepper made paprika?
But the tomato is interesting because are they selling canned tomatoes, or is the tomato unrelated?
Yes. So let me get exactly what's going on. It's also weirdly and to be fair, like this is very evil, but I do love it. Like I just love that they are for some reason going for this. It's such a choice.
Yes.
So the pickle and the pepper don't have a name, but the tomato does, and the baby's name is Brittany Tomatoes, which is
I love that.
Which is so funny. They are pickled tomatoes.
Okay. I don't think I knew pickled tomatoes existed. Should I have known that?
I don't think so. And I don't think that you should have to know that. And I feel bad that I'm forcing you to know this. And then this same company, I also like have a question of like which company started doing these gendered pickles first, because there's also a character in the Tony Pacos pickle universe that bears a striking resemblance to one Garlic Joe. And I'm like,
What's his name?
He doesn't even have a name.
Oh, geez.
They didn't even have the courage.
Does he also have a crop top, which is my favorite fashion for those who present masculine? It's like,
I love the crop top.
It is the best, and it is so sad that it died in the 80s, but I think it is coming back. I've been seeing some crop tops around this summer.
I would love that. I'm right. I mean, it's like I feel like we're back in a place where everyone's allowed to wear shorts again. Like, let's get crop tops in the mix.
Let's keep this thing going. Okay, so this pickle, does he have a crop top?
No, he doesn't have a crop top. The thing that is kind of damning is that, like Garlic Joe, this pickle is jacked and is a garlic pickle and is holding a barbell made of garlic, which Garlic Joe also is. But again, this pickle just pales in comparison, because I just forgot until I just pulled up an image that Garlic Joe is wearing fingerless gloves.
Oh my God, I didn't actually notice that.
I love him. It just keeps
seamless. Giving this image. He also appears to have maybe like one of the chin goatees just down on the chin.
Yes.
Or is that just a shadow?
I
think it's a
can't
goatee.
tell if he has a cleft chin or a goatee. And either way, I'm like, ooh, he's a bit sexy.
He's got like a Buzz Lightyear sort of chin.
He does.
Face shape. Yeah.
I kind of have like a crush on Garlic Joe.
I get it.
But then it's also like, I don't know, if someone approached me and said, look, we're making a Van Holten's pickle movie, I would want to be involved.
And I think that you should be, and I think that you would be at this point. God. Wow, I'm looking at all of the pickles now. Sour Sis looks elderly to me. She does not look like a teenager.
It's so, really? I appreciate this alternate take. I always assumed that she was teenage because I feel like she's like, just coded in this way of like, I don't know, she's supposed to seem vain, I think, because she's looking at herself in the mirror.
Yes.
But maybe she's a vain older woman in a crop top.
No, I do not think, to be clear, I am saying the illustration has not properly rendered a teenage girl as a pickle, in my opinion.
The illustration absolutely sucks. I mean, it's like very scary to me. Hot Mama kind of looks like my jazz dance teacher from high school.
Ooh.
I know.
Oh, that's nice. And then Big Papa has very few. He's also naked. Oh, wait, I guess so is Hot Mama. But he doesn't have a lot of defining features. He's just kind of got like Mickey Mouse gloves and cartoon shoes.
I don't know why he has sneakers. Yeah, and the fact that like it's just like so much thought appears to have gone into this where they're like, all right, the pickles that we want everyone to think are men are going to wear sneakers. You're like, why? What?
Sour Sis has some flats, it looks like.
She has ballet flats. Hot Mama's in heels.
She's got a little bit of a drag queen feel to her. And, you know, there's a lot of queerness happening in these pickles for me. There's a lot of like drag implications and it's on accident, but that's what happens when you overly gender things. It becomes camp.
It does become camp. I think, yeah, especially when you get to like, I think like Hot Mama and Garlic Joe in particular, it's just like, you know, I'm with them. I wish I could have a talk with them. I would love to see a Van Holten's pickle drag show, the most niche drag show of all time.
You are reading my mind. You are reading my mind. I was going to say, Jamie, we got to produce this drag show. Maybe this burlesque show. I'm not sure, but there's definitely something here.
I mean, yeah, especially because only some of the pickles are wearing clothes. The world really opens up to you. Oh, my God. A Van Holten's pickle drag show. I would love it.
Hey, the possibilities are endless. Okay, well, I think that is going to be the best place to stop that I could think of. Coming soon, pickle drag show. So, Jamie, thank you so much for coming on. And I'm so glad we finally got to talk and hang out in this very specific context. And yeah, you have written an amazing book. And I really hope that every one of our listeners checks it out, especially those who haven't already, which would be shocking because I feel like you're the queen of hot dogs. You're out there, you're touring around. You're living the life. I love it. So thank you so much.
Oh, thank you so much for having me. This has been so much fun.
This was American Hysteria. Make sure you pick up a copy of Raw Dog by Jamie Loftus. You can find that link in our show notes. And you can follow her on social media at Jamie Christ Superstar on Instagram and at Jamie Loftus Help on Twitter. If you want to get more of our show, you can head to patreon.com/American Hysteria. Not only will you get ad-free early episodes, but you'll get access to Hysteria Home Companion, where producer Miranda and I share stories from the cutting room floor of each topic. And you can also be added to our close friends Instagram, where you will get to see how the sausage is made when it comes to American Hysteria. That's patreon.com/American Hysteria. Another great way to support our show is to leave us a 5-star review on the app of your choosing. It's super easy. Your phone's probably in your hand right now. You could just go and do it for us, and it makes a huge difference. Thank you so much. This episode has sound design by Clear Como Studios, was edited and produced by Miranda Zickler, and as always, I'm your host, Chelsey Weber-Smith. Thanks, as always, for listening. And if you see any cute, queer gas station jumbo pickles out there in the world, make sure you slip them my Instagram handle. Have a great week.